Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that was sent to me by one of our admins. It is a continuation of an email that was sent to us by one of our listeners. The message reads like this. So, when I was at that all-white party, I was disgusted with all that I had seen at that party. This is the continuation from my previous email. My husband had never showed any interest in me since when he had started flourishing in his ministry. And now I understood why, because whenever I would try to make him pray with me, he would refuse. I don't know how many times that I tried to make him pray with me like we used to do when my husband began his ministry, because each and every evening my husband would call me and the kids so that we can worship together. But after all the things that started to happen in our lives, I just thought that maybe it was because my husband had found his success, so he never needed or wanted me in his ministry. I was now more like a trophy wife. But when I had gone to that all-white party, that is when I found out that my husband was nothing but an occultist. Everything that I had seen there had just disgusted me, and it had opened my eyes. He was living a double-sided life, and to me, he was this guy who was always occupied with work whilst he was busy seeking power by being a member of the occult. There was one point in time when my husband, when we were sleeping in bed, so me and him, I don't know for how many weeks he had avoided to have any sexual intercourse with me. So on that night, I asked him if we could talk, and he said, "Talk, what do you want to speak with me?" Then I asked him, how did he expect me to live if he was not giving me, if he didn't want to be intimate with me? He then told me to go on my phone. So I went on my phone and he said, search for the term sex toy. So when he said sex toy, I thought that maybe he wanted to spice up our sex life. So I went on the internet, then I searched up the term that he had asked me to search for it. My brother, what he said next, it really shocked me, but I could not do anything about it. He said, you see, you can actually even order these things online and they'll be delivered to your doorstep. I never thought that these things can be delivered to your doorstep. So what you can do now is that just order one of these things and they will be delivered to your doorstep and you will use it. I was really heartbroken, and I didn't even know why my husband had chosen to be so rude like this to me. And I knew that indeed my husband, he had started sleeping with younger girls that were attending at our church, and there was nothing that I could do about it, because all that I wanted to do was to keep up the appearance of us being the happiest couple, because here and there most of our church congregants, they would come over to our place. Sometimes me and my husband, we would be having an argument, but if one of our congregants will call us and they will tell us that they are coming over to our place with their wives so that we can sort out any disagreement that will be happening in their marriage, my husband will tell me to go to the bathroom, wash myself up and put on some makeup. My brother, this is how my husband would have intercourse with me. So when I'll be busy in the bathroom bathing myself, that is when my husband would come into the bathroom and force himself on me, sometimes without even him removing his own clothes. This thing, he would do it whenever someone would come to our house, like if they will be looking for any counseling services. So when any of our church congregants would come to our house so that we can try to resolve the matter that will be troubling them in their marriage, they would find out that me and my husband, we would be acting up as if we have the happiest marriage. I want you to know that if you go to churches and they give praise to a human being instead of God, then you are lost. People that used to come to our house, they really thought that I was staying with God himself, because whenever they would look at my husband, they never saw a human being, but they see a God instead. Unfortunately, a lot of people follow the Papa gang, are too blinded, and they will never open their eyes. I spent days without leaving the house. This was the rule that my husband had gave to me. He said that whenever I wanted to leave the house, it's either I was with him or he would ask one of his friends so that I can go with his friends. It didn't matter where I wanted to go. If he was too busy for me, then he would ask one of his friends so that they can take me to wherever the place that I wanted to go. Then my husband came back from his trip that time when I had gone with his friend to the party. His aide went to pick him up from the airport. And let me tell you one thing, my brother. The reason why most of these fake pastors are so successful, it is because all of the people that work for them, in most cases, those people, even though they will be suffering deep in poverty, most of them, they are not paid. Do you know that these people that work for these fake pastors, they actually think that by working for those fake pastors, they will be doing the work of the Lord? Like our aide who used to drive my husband around, he never got paid anything. What my husband would do is that here and there, he would just go to the shops and buy a lot of groceries for him and his wife. And whenever my husband will do that, that man and his wife, they will celebrate as if the Lord had opened up the gates of heaven for them. But they didn't even realize that the man was being used for nothing. At my home, a lot of men, they would come so that they can help with keeping up the yard, like mowing the lawn, tending the flowers. All of these things, they were done without them being paid, because they thought that by assisting us, then God was going to bless them. When my husband arrived, we greeted each other, and he was very quick to leave the house as if he was rushing off to a meeting. I had lost interest in him, and this new guy who had came into my life, he had also shown me the other side of my husband's life. I was confused, and I knew that this was not the life that I wanted, but maybe if I continued seeing this guy, I would get to know a lot about my husband. Let me say, I am not proud of the life that I was living, and cheating on my husband, it was not a good thing to do, but this is just a confession to open your eyes so that you can understand that some of your so-called fake pastors, they don't even treat their wives properly. You can see them wearing the most expensive clothes, jewelry, driving the latest cars, being gifted on their birthdays, but never think for a second that those women are happy. Most of them, they are living under conditions that can lead you into depression, because it is very hard to know that your husband is cheating on you and there is nothing that you can do about it. Fine, okay, you can say that your husband will be cheating on you, but why avoiding having intercourse with you for something like 2 months, even more than that? Won't you go crazy in a situation like that? And whenever you are at church or in a public place, you have to pretend as if you are the happy wife that is getting everything that she wants from her husband. My husband was busy chasing fame and money, and at home he never had time for the kids. If the kids wanted time with their father, my husband would only ask my kids if they wanted the latest gadgets that will be on the market, like video games and stuff like that. There was actually a room that was only dedicated for these video gaming consoles, and sometimes I'll be too depressed even to notice how many hours my kids were spending time in that video room. If you would see him preaching in church, you would say that indeed here is the man of God. everything about him was about fame. When they went to church, they would be having their personal photographers, and then my husband, Papa, would sit on a very special chair. When he got out of the car, there were other men that would rush to him so that they can polish his shoes, while others will be holding an umbrella for him. It didn't matter if it was on a hot morning or not. This was the rule that he had given to his attendants, that whenever he would get out of the car, then an umbrella should be there waiting for him. This man, let me laugh, my brother. It seems as if he thinks that he is a king or the president. He was treated as if he was a king. If you do not see God, but there is glorification of a human being in church, then there is the problem with that church. I would be given your envelopes with the tithe money on a Sunday after church so as to take my kids to the saloon. After the secretaries of the church would have submitted the money to him, he would come. Sometimes he would be shouting and with excitement in his eyes, because he would be holding a bag full of envelopes, and when he would open that bag that would be filled with envelopes, it really broke my heart, because you would see that the logo that would be on those envelopes, it was a logo that represented tithing. Then you would load up the bed with all of those envelopes, and he would ask me to help him to count the money. This is how we counted the money for the tithing. Then he would put that money in the safe. After a few days, then he would ask the secretary so that the money can be deposited into the bank. On another accounts, on the following Sunday, that is when he would start to preach about tithing as if people were not giving enough to the Lord. But the secretaries would not even realize that my husband was taking a huge chunk of the money. This is what my husband would do. On another occasions, my husband would actually ask if there will be any volunteers from church that wanted to assist in some of his programs. So we have a kitchen soup, then we have other programs whereby we go around helping the poor and the orphans. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. My husband, I know that he would do all of these things so as to hide the fact that he was stealing a lot of money from the church. But the way that these churches are operating, it is operating as if it is a business, and the pastor is the CEO, and the secretaries, even if they notice that a lot of abuse is being done when it comes to the finances, they cannot do anything, because my husband had this saying whenever someone would try to ask him to be more transparent about the finances of the church, then he would say that, no, God has showed me to use such amount so that I can help so and so. So whenever my husband would say that God has showed me, then that person would be questioning my husband. They will be afraid, because they will think that they will be questioning God himself, because my husband, whenever he would be preaching, he can go on and on about him receiving a lot of visions. When I found out that my husband was just a fake pastor who was pretending, even I became more bold when I was dating his friend, because I knew that this whole thing, it was just a fiasco. It was just drama that was being done. No miracles. Yes, there were miracles that were done here and there, but they used demons to perform most of those miracles. And on the other side, me and my husband's friend, we had really fallen in love and we had clicked, and I really loved the chemistry that was between me and that man, and I loved the way that he would make me feel like I was a human being again. When we went to the all-white party, I never asked him anything or commented, because he thought that my husband and I, we were in this together. I really wanted to discover more about my husband's ways, and this guy seemed to be the best person who would expose everything. I knew that he was never going to ask my husband if he had allowed me to go to that all-white party. With each and every cheating day, I became more bold. On most occasions, I would even lie to my husband that I would be going to church, but I will be going to meet up with my boyfriend. That is when one day my boyfriend told me that he had this other trip and he wanted to fly out of the country. This was like a quick trip. I had not even prepared myself, but I was interested in going with him because this country, it is a holiday destination. So I lied to my husband that I'll be going over to my mom. Brother, it was quite a bold lie. And when I spoke with my mom, I just told my mom that me and my husband, we were fighting. So please, if my husband asks you if I'll be coming there, please just tell him that I'll be coming there. My mom knew about the situation, but she didn't know that my husband was just a fake pastor. I told my mom that I was going to visit my cousin's sister so that I can get some fresh air. My mom didn't even know that my boyfriend had already booked the flight tickets for us. And my husband believed me, and I knew that the reason why he quickly believed me, it was because when I was not at the house, he wanted to have his own shenanigans there. He wanted to invite his girlfriends to our place. So I didn't care anymore about him because I was getting a lot of sex outside of the house. I was getting a lot of sex outside of the marriage anyway. I was very excited to leave the country for the first time in about 3 years since me and my husband had been on holiday, and I made all the preparations that were necessary. We left the country, and for the looks of the things, my husband, yes, indeed, he was happy to be free. Even when I lied to him that I was having problems with my networks, he said, no, it is okay. Just enjoy yourself. Please speak with Ma and tell her that very soon I am going to visit her. Yes, he had successfully managed to turn me into a crook just like him. I was living my life to the fullest. We left the country and we arrived in about 5 hours in our destination. He told me that he had a meeting with this spiritual leader. This was my boyfriend. He had to attend that meeting in about 2 hours. This guy, like I told you, he had his own church. This trip, even though it was more like his holiday, but this trip was more dedicated to making him stronger in his miracle performances. Besides being a fake pastor too, he showed some compassion and he loved me, or maybe he knew how to treat a woman so well. He then told me that he wanted to spend some time with me, so we would drive to the spiritual leader's place, then I would wait for him, then after that, me and him, we would go for dinner. Such trips, we don't take any pictures together, and if I am to take a picture, it will be him taking me, and he will never be part of that picture. He never wanted that. He had taught me very well how to cheat on your husband and never to be caught. We went to this other place, and this place, when we arrived at that house, it was more like a temple. It was not like a house. It was built on top of a roof. That mansion, my brother, it was really beautiful. Even though we had entered into the yard using the front gate, but then you had to drive until you had reached at the back of the house. That is where the parking place was. And this house at the back, it was actually more like an office, more than a temple or a house. So he just told me to sit down and wait for him. He then went into another room, and then the spiritual leader, to my surprise, was a female. She just appeared from nowhere. Then the room was more creepy, and it was filled with smoke, and the lady sat folding her legs and I in front of her, and in front of her was a pot that was full of red hot charcoal. She looked at me with a question on her face, then she just ignored me. Have you ever been in a room whereby the person that you will be in the room with, they will just ignore you? This is what this lady did. She just looked at me once, then she chose to ignore me. She looked at my boyfriend. She smiled at my boyfriend as if she knew the scandal that was going on between me and my boyfriend. As they were talking, my boyfriend never made any attempt to look at that woman's face. My boyfriend knelt down like the way that people do when they are steaming. He never looked up. I had never seen something like that. For a moment, I stopped breathing, thinking that he had died. Then he lifted his face and there was no sign of burning or blisters. This was after his spiritual leader, he had lifted up that pot that was full of red charcoal and placed it just right next to him. I was really scared because that pot, it looked like it had been on the fire for a very long time because the pot was actually red. She then started speaking in her language with authority, then applying a lot of oil over his body, his suit and everything. He then slept flat. This whole thing was more than an hour and I sat there without even coughing. It was really scary. And that lady, when my boyfriend had fallen unconscious and when she was looking at me, she was more like in a trance, without breathing, without even swallowing her saliva, without breathing, without moving. I was really scared. It was as if I was alone in that room. Maybe she was looking at my soul. All that I can say, there was nothing holy being performed there. It was just a way for him to get more followers and make their followers love them, such that when they want to have a certain amount of money, then the church members would donate without a doubt. It was time to leave, so we left. He also indicated that my husband usually comes here for rituals. That is when I thought to myself that is why that lady had been looking at me like that. But my boyfriend promised me that this lady, she didn't even know that my husband was married to me. I had seen enough for the day. Even when we went to dinner, I was not even happy, but I pretended as if I was happy because my boyfriend thought that I knew everything that my husband was doing. If I get the chance, I will let you know how my husband eventually caught me.